something that I've seen sort of in my notes here is you were talking about the CTI League. I don't know if you've touched upon that yet. I think it's part of revelations that you've just made and maybe forthcoming revelations that you and Schellenberger are making. What is the CTI League and how does it relate to what I was just saying? The normalization of measures that would otherwise be seen as egregious. Like you said, certain protests being banned or certain speech being banned is not something we would have tolerated, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, again, this CTI League is this group that was formed, officially to address COVID misinformation and disinformation. But we see in the internal documents that they were actually involved in anything related to current events, especially the elections. And you're right; they absolutely their raison d'etre was the health emergency, but internally they were doing everything from following followers of Trump to following Free Gaza protests to following the Democratic Socialists of America. And yes, it's the climate of emergency is central to this whole concept because if you're raised in a Western liberal democracy grounded in Enlightenment values, the whole idea is that human history had shown us that when power is concentrated too much, the individual's rights are constantly violated. And in order to protect against that, we have to make sure that power is diffuse, that people have self-determination, that they have participation in their own political destiny. I mean, that's the entire idea behind the American system, for instance, right? But these people want to reverse that. They openly want to change how we think about that particular issue. They think that focusing on individual rights at the expense of the collective is dangerous. And therefore, we have to, change how people think, even about everything from hate speech to threat to informed consent in medicine. Once doctors cared intensely about informed consent after World War II, after what we found out about happened in the concentration camps, the Nuremberg reports made it mandatory, for every civilized country to have informed consent with medicines. But when the COVID vaccine came along, there was a strong public relations campaign no, just take the shot and, you don't need to know exactly what the results are, whether there have been side effects or not. That's not your concern. That's our concern, right? And this is totally antithetical to how we think in free societies, but they want to change that. That's a necessity for them to change that, and they will, unless there's significant opposition.
Bloody hell, yeah! It's not. It isn't. What do I want to say? Hyperbolic then to refer to it as kind of social engineering, that our behavior is being altered, and you can see how that can be done quite easily just through the very obvious introduction of new technology. It just would have been unthinkable that we would have tagged ourselves in the way we do through tech, hand over information in the way we do through our phones and stuff. So when you start adding ideological tags to that, that's fascinating.